Chosen one, what you're about to hear is not a suggestion. It is a divine command issued from the throne room of eternity itself. Right now, in this exact moment, heaven has placed a silence protocol over your life, and you may have felt it without understanding why. Your words have been carrying more weight than you realized, broadcasting coordinates into both seen and unseen realms, and the enemy has been listening. God has shut your mouth not as punishment, but as protection, because what you're carrying is so volatile, so destiny-altering, that premature speech could collapse the very future he's been constructing around you. This is not about being silenced in defeat. This is about being strategically repositioned in absolute victory. The gag order from heaven is a wartime directive, and you are standing at the threshold of something so powerful that even angels have been assigned to operate in secrecy around you. Your silence is not weakness, it is the loaded chamber before the shot that changes everything. Chosen one, like this video, subscribe, and comment, "I am ready" for a powerful surprise. The gag order from heaven. There are moments in the spiritual warfare timeline when God himself intervenes with a command so absolute, so non-negotiable, that it reverberates through every dimension of your existence. This is one of those moments. The order to shut your mouth was not delivered with emotion or frustration. It arrived like a classified military directive stamped with the authority of the Most High. You may have felt it as a sudden inability to speak about certain things, a strange hesitation before sharing what once flowed freely, or an unexplainable discomfort when trying to explain your journey to others. This is heaven's silence protocol activating over your life, and it is not arbitrary. Your words, chosen one, have been functioning as more than mere communication. They have been altering probability streams in the spiritual realm. Every time you speak about your calling, your vision, your next move, you are essentially broadcasting into multiple dimensions simultaneously. And here's what heaven detected that you couldn't see. Certain outcomes in your destiny can only materialize if they remain unspoken until their appointed convergence point. Speaking too early doesn't just reveal your plans to others, it actually disrupts the quantum alignment of events that must occur in a specific sequence for your breakthrough to manifest in its fullest form. Your mouth had become a broadcast tower, and dark intelligences were using your own words to triangulate your position, predict your movements, and set up ambushes along your path. God saw this surveillance network forming around you, and he moved with the precision of a special forces commander extracting an operative from enemy territory. The silence he imposed is not restraint born of mistrust. It is the containment of volatile destiny, the way a demolitions expert carefully handles explosives that could either build or destroy depending on when and how they're deployed. You are carrying destiny-grade material, chosen one, and heaven has temporarily classified your mission as top secret because the enemy's intelligence operation was getting too close to sabotaging what's coming. This silence is your protection, your strategic advantage, and the very thing that will allow your next season to arrive undiluted and uncontested. The enemy's listening grid. You need to understand something that most people never grasp about spiritual warfare. Ancient forces do not primarily track you through sight or physical surveillance. They operate through a sophisticated listening grid designed to capture spoken confessions, declarations, and explanations. Every unnecessary explanation you offered about your struggles, every detailed account of your plans, every vulnerable admission about your fears. These became coordinate markers in an invisible mapping system. Dark intelligences do not function on guesswork or intuition. They are ancient, calculating, and strategic. They wait with inhuman patience for you to verbalize your alignment, your intentions, your weaknesses, and your aspirations. The moment you speak, they no longer have to search for you. You've given them your exact location. You were being mapped through your own storytelling, chosen one, and you didn't even realize it. Every conversation where you felt compelled to defend yourself. Every social media post where you announced your next move. Every late-night phone call where you processed your emotions out loud. These were not innocent moments of connection. They were intelligence-gathering opportunities for forces that have been assigned to monitor you because of what you're about to become. The enemy's strategy is elegantly simple. Let the chosen ones reveal themselves through their own mouths, then use that information to construct perfectly timed obstacles, distractions, and attacks. But here's what shifted everything. When God commanded your silence, He didn't just quiet your voice, He dismantled their entire intelligence network around you. Suddenly, the listening posts went dark. The coordinate markers stopped updating. The predictive algorithms they were running on your behavior patterns lost their data stream. You became invisible to their tracking systems, not because you physically disappeared, but because you stopped feeding them the information they needed to locate you spiritually. This silence has turned you into a ghost operative in the spiritual realm, present, moving, and advancing, but completely off their radar. They're still scanning for your signal, but you're no longer broadcasting. And in that silence, you've gained the single greatest advantage in warfare, the element of surprise. The betrayal code embedded in speech. If you study the pattern of how chosen ones throughout history have fallen, you'll discover something chilling. They are almost never destroyed by their obvious enemies first. The real devastation comes from overheard words that become weapons in the hands of those who were once trusted. Speech exposes the architecture of your emotional vulnerabilities, the frequency of your fears, the exact coordinates of what matters most to you. And there are listeners, some human, some not, who do not attack directly. Instead, they echo. They mirror your own words back to you in distorted forms, replaying your confessions at strategic moments designed to break you. You share your insecurity about being enough, and months later, during your moment of greatest opportunity, someone throws those exact words back at you as disqualification. You express doubt about a particular aspect of your calling, and suddenly, that doubt is being amplified through multiple voices around you, creating an echo chamber that makes you question everything. This is not coincidence. This is the betrayal code embedded in speech, and it operates with mechanical precision. Heaven detected that you were approaching a critical juncture where the words you'd spoken in vulnerable seasons were being collected, catalogued, and prepared for future use against you. There were people in your circle, some knowingly, others unknowingly, who were serving as recording devices for dark agendas, not because they were evil, but because they were unaware of what they were being used for. Every time you opened up, every time you processed out loud, every time you sought comfort through explanation, fragments of your inner world were being archived, and a case was being built, chosen one, not in a human court, but in the court of public opinion, in the tribunal of your own mind, in the accusations that would one day be launched to discredit you right before your elevation. But God saw the trap before it could fully form. He sealed your mouth before your own words could become the chains that bind you. Heaven intervened, not to isolate you, but to protect you from the betrayal that was already in motion. The silence broke the transmission midstream, scrambling the data, corrupting the files, and rendering the collected evidence useless. Without fresh material, the echo chamber lost its power. The betrayal code could not execute because the necessary words were never spoken. The name lock protocol. There is ancient wisdom embedded in the understanding that certain realities cannot activate while being named aloud prematurely. Your true identity, your ultimate calling, the full scope of what God has written over you, these exist in a realm beyond language until the appointed time of their manifestation. When you speak titles, positions, or destinies before their proper season, you are not claiming them into existence. You are inviting counterfeit crowns. Dark forces specialize in creating false versions of true callings, and they deploy these counterfeits the moment they hear you name yourself prematurely. You are nearing a threshold where the act of naming yourself, of declaring your identity out loud, would have summoned resistance on a scale you were not yet equipped to handle. Every great identity throughout history has followed the same pattern. It was hidden, incubated in silence, protected from premature exposure, and only revealed when the fullness of time had come. Moses spent 40 years in obscurity before his name carried the weight to lead nations. David was anointed in secret, then hunted in silence before his kingship could manifest publicly. Jesus himself operated in relative anonymity for 30 years before 3 years of public ministry. The pattern is consistent. Premature naming invites premature warfare. God sealed your mouth to protect the integrity of your true designation because there are spiritual laws governing identity revelation. If you speak the name before you've become the name, you create a dissonance in the spiritual realm, a gap between declaration and manifestation that dark forces exploit mercilessly. They don't need to destroy you. They only need to confuse you about which version of yourself is real. But Heaven's silence protocol has preserved something sacred. The original name written over you before time, the uncorrupted designation that was assigned to you in eternity, the identity that no counterfeit can replicate because it's never been spoken into the realm where counterfeits are manufactured. When your mouth opens again, and it will, the name that emerges will carry such undeniable authority that no imitation will be able to stand in its presence. The false witness trap. There is a brutal reality operating in the unseen realm that most chosen ones discover too late. Words spoken in vulnerable seasons become ammunition in future battles. You think you're just processing, just venting, just seeking understanding from those you trust, but dark strategists are playing a longer game. They are patient archivists, collecting fragments of your own admissions, your own doubts, your own confessions, and storing them for later use. Accusers do not create lies from nothing. They are far more sophisticated than that. They weaponize your truth, taking the words you spoke in weakness and presenting them as evidence of your disqualification in your season of strength. Heaven detected something that sent shockwaves through the angelic ranks assigned to you. A future tribunal was forming around your past statements. Not a physical court, but something far more dangerous, a spiritual prosecution where your own voice would be played back as the primary witness against your worthiness, your readiness, your right to step into what's coming. Every moment you doubted out loud, every time you admitted you weren't sure you could handle it, every confession of inadequacy, these were being filed away, time-stamped, and prepared for presentation. The strategy is devastatingly effective because it uses your own words to disqualify you. It bypasses external accusations entirely and makes you the one who testifies against yourself. But God, in his infinite strategy, erased the evidence before the trial could begin. The silence he imposed on you was not just about stopping new statements from being recorded, it was about nullifying the old ones. When you went silent, the spiritual algorithm that was building the case against you lost its cohesion. Without new data to reinforce old patterns, the archived statements lost their contextual power. The prosecution could not proceed because the key witness, your own continuing narrative of doubt, suddenly went missing. The case collapsed before it was ever formally filed, and you were acquitted of charges you never even knew were being prepared. The mirror entity response. In the realm of spiritual warfare, there exists a phenomenon that few comprehend until they've experienced its devastating effects. There are beings and forces that do not oppose you directly through confrontation. Instead, they imitate. Every time you explained your vision, described your calling, shared the prophetic insights you'd received, a process was occurring in the unseen realm. Distorted versions of your original revelation were being released elsewhere, through other people, in other contexts, carrying similar language but corrupted frequency. This is not about people deliberately stealing your ideas, though that happens too. This is about something far more insidious, mirror entities that replicate divine downloads and release them through multiple channels to dilute the power of the original. When the true word finally manifests through you, people experience déjà vu. They've heard something like it before. The edge of revelation is gone. The sharpness of fresh word is dulled. Copies do not just spread your message, they weaken your signal. They create interference patterns that make it harder for people to recognize the authentic frequency when it finally emerges from you. You were hemorrhaging originality, chosen one, and you couldn't see it happening. Every time you spoke freely about what God was showing you, the mirror entity response was activated. Your words became templates for counterfeits, and the spiritual atmosphere was becoming cluttered with distorted echoes of what was supposed to emerge uniquely through you. God's command to shut your mouth was a strategic countermeasure to this replication phenomenon. Silence starved the mirror entities of reference material. Without new content to copy, without fresh revelations to distort, their operations ground to a halt, and something profound began to occur. Your uniqueness was being restored through secrecy. The longer you remained silent, the more your original frequency purified itself, separating from all the contaminated versions that had been circulating. When you finally speak again, there will be no confusion, no déjà vu, no sense that people have heard this before. The word will land with the force of absolute originality because it's been protected in silence, incubated in secrecy, and preserved from the mirror entity response that seeks to replicate everything powerful before its proper time. The timeline convergence window. You have entered a corridor in time and space so narrow, so precise, that a single misplaced word could fracture your entire trajectory. This is not metaphor. This is the mathematics of destiny. In the realm where decisions create branching realities, where choices split timelines, where spoken words act as quantum selection mechanisms, you were approaching a convergence point of massive significance. Multiple possible futures were collapsing toward a single moment of crystallization, and your speech was threatening to lock you into a lesser timeline prematurely. Here's what most people do not understand about prophetic seasons. There are windows where silence is not passive, it is actively generative. By not speaking, by not declaring, by not choosing through words, you were allowing multiple future paths to remain open simultaneously. This is advanced spiritual physics. Words collapse possibility into actuality, but premature words collapse the wrong possibilities into inferior actualities. You were being maneuvered by divine intelligence through a maze of potential outcomes, and each time you started to speak about which direction you were taking, you were essentially closing doors that God wanted to keep open until He could position you at the exact right threshold. God was navigating you between outcomes without resistance from your own decision-making process. Your silence was the consent that allowed Him to operate with maximum flexibility. Think of it like this. A grandmaster chess player does not explain his strategy mid-game because speaking the plan allows opponents to counter it. God was playing a dimensional chess game with your destiny, and your mouth was about to announce moves that would have given the enemy time to respond. The silence preserved not just one future, but the highest possible convergence point, the timeline where every variable aligns, where every promise fulfills simultaneously, where breakthrough doesn't come in isolated incidents, but in a cascading chain reaction of divine favor. That timeline still exists for you, chosen one, because you stopped speaking long enough for God to position you at its entrance. One wrong word, and you would have veered into a parallel track. Still blessed, still moving forward, but not the fullness. The gag order saved you from settling for good when extraordinary was still available. The sacrificial misinterpretation ritual. There is a dark pattern that repeats throughout history with terrifying consistency. Chosen ones are often offered up socially before they are ever elevated spiritually. This is not accidental. It is a ritual mechanism designed to abort destinies before they reach maturity. You were being baited, chosen one, and you didn't recognize the trap. Every time someone misunderstood you and you rushed to explain yourself, every time you felt the need to defend your journey to people who were never meant to understand it, every time you tried to make your calling make sense to minds that were not wired to receive it, you were participating in your own sacrificial preparation. The ritual works like this. Get the chosen one to speak in vulnerable contexts, ensure their words are misinterpreted, allow public opinion to turn against them based on those misinterpretations, then use that collective misunderstanding as justification for their symbolic removal from influence, platform, or opportunity. It is a spiritual assassination disguised as social consequence, and you are walking directly into it. Your words were being harvested specifically to create the narrative framework for your sacrifice. Not a physical sacrifice, but something equally devastating. The sacrifice of your credibility, your reputation, your right to be heard before your time truly comes. The most dangerous part of this ritual is that it feels natural. It feels like you're just defending yourself, just setting the record straight, just helping people understand. But what you're actually doing is providing the material that will be used to construct the altar on which your current season will be burned in public view. God interrupted the ritual mid-sequence. His command to shut your mouth disrupted the entire sacrificial process because without your statements, there was no narrative coherent enough to justify your removal. Misinterpretation requires interpretation, and interpretation requires words. When you went silent, the ritual lost its fuel. The altar was prepared, the audience was gathered, the accusations were forming, but the sacrifice never appeared. You were pulled off the altar unnoticed, extracted from a spiritual execution that was already in motion, saved by a divine gag order that looked like limitation but functioned as liberation. The power leak phenomenon. There is an energetic reality that governs spiritual authority, and most people violate it unknowingly until they've lost so much power They can barely recognize themselves. Words release energy. Every declaration, every explanation, every testimony is an energetic transaction, and not all environments are equipped to contain what you're releasing. You were hemorrhaging authority into rooms that could not steward it, speaking pearls before swine, not because you were foolish, but because you didn't realize how much power your words actually carried. When you speak in the wrong atmosphere, to the wrong audience, at the wrong time, you are not just sharing information. You are transferring authority to people who have no capacity to honor it, protect it, or multiply it. Instead, they feed on it. They consume the energy of your revelation, feel temporarily empowered by proximity to your anointing, and then they leave, carrying fragments of your power with them without ever having earned the right to steward it. This is the power leak phenomenon, and it was draining you systematically. Every time you finished a conversation where you'd shared deeply, you felt emptied. Every time you explained your vision to someone who didn't truly understand, you felt diminished. Every time you tried to defend your journey to critics who were never invested in your success, you felt weaker. This was not psychological. This was energetic. You were pouring out authority into vessels that were not designed to hold it, and the leaks were compounding. God sealed the leak with surgical precision. The silence he imposed was not about withholding your gift from the world. It was about reclaiming lost power and preventing further hemorrhaging. The moment you stopped speaking indiscriminately, something profound began to shift. The authority that had been leaking out began to consolidate within you. Your presence grew heavier. People started sensing something about you they couldn't name. You walked into rooms, and the atmosphere shifted without you saying a word. This is what happens when power stops leaking. It builds, it compounds, it becomes so dense within you that your very presence communicates what your words used to strain to express. You are not less powerful in silence, chosen one. You are exponentially more dangerous, and the enemy knows it. The angelic cover operation. There are dimensions of spiritual protection that only activate under specific conditions, and one of those conditions is silence. Right now, whether you perceive it or not, you have angelic escorts assigned to you that are operating under covert protocols. These are not the worship and praise angels you read about in comfortable scriptures. These are tactical angels, strategic angels, warriors assigned to covert missions that require complete operational secrecy. And here's what heaven knew that you didn't. Your talking was interfering with their maneuverability. Every time you explained where you were going, what you were planning, what God had shown you, you were essentially broadcasting coordinates that forced your angelic protection to operate defensively rather than offensively. They had to keep adjusting their positions to compensate for the information you were leaking. They couldn't move freely because your words were drawing attention to areas they needed to secure in secret. God silenced you to allow unseen escorts to reposition freely. The moment you went quiet, angelic operations around you shifted from reactive defense to proactive offense. They were no longer spending their energy protecting you from threats you'd accidentally announced. They were now free to advance ahead of you, clearing paths you don't even know you'll need yet, dismantling ambushes before you arrive, negotiating spiritual permissions in rooms you haven't entered. This is high-level spiritual warfare, chosen one, and it requires that you trust what you cannot see more than you trust the comfort of being understood by what you can see. Angels assigned to covert missions do not operate under verbal exposure. The moment you speak about what they're doing, their clearance is revoked, their access is restricted, and they're forced to pull back. But when you cooperate with silence, when you allow them to move without your commentary, they operate with a level of freedom and authority that produces results far beyond what your words could ever accomplish. Protection has intensified around you exponentially since you stopped explaining yourself, and you've probably felt it. Doors that should have stayed closed are opening. Obstacles that should have blocked you are evaporating. Enemies that should have attacked are suddenly silent. This is not luck. This is angelic cover operation at full capacity, functioning in the unrestricted authority that your silence has made possible. The test of unseen loyalty. Not every divine command is about the enemy, the mission, or the outcome. Some are about something far more intimate, the relationship between you and God alone. The silence he imposed on you was not primarily for strategic advantage. It was a test of unseen loyalty. Could you trust him without narrating the process to others? Could you endure misunderstanding without rushing to defend yourself? Could you walk through isolation without seeking validation through explanation? This was a loyalty trial, invisible to humans, but recorded eternally in the archives of heaven. Most people fail this test because they cannot differentiate between trusting God and being understood by people. They need their obedience to make sense to others. They need their sacrifice to be witnessed, their faith to be applauded, their silence to be interpreted correctly by the crowd. But God was asking you something radical. Will you obey me even when it looks like nothing is happening, even when people think you've lost your way, even when your silence is misinterpreted as defeat, weakness, or withdrawal? This is the test that separates true chosen ones from those who merely want the title. Anyone can obey when obedience comes with applause. Anyone can be silent when silence is understood as strategy. But can you be silent when it looks like you're just being silenced? Can you refrain from speaking when your reputation is on the line and one word could clear your name? Can you trust God's timing more than you trust your need to be understood? You are passing this test, chosen one, and you may not even realize the significance of what's being established in you. Every day you do not explain yourself to people who demand explanations. Every moment you choose trust over defense. Every time you swallow words that would vindicate you in human eyes but violate heaven's timing. You are laying a foundation of loyalty that will hold the weight of the authority coming to you. This test has no human witnesses, no public scoreboard, no immediate reward. But it is being recorded in a realm where rank is determined not by public performance, but by private faithfulness. You are being promoted in a dimension most people never even access because they cannot pass through the doorway of unseen loyalty. The final reveal delay everything you've been carrying, everything you've been building, everything God has been preparing you for. It cannot be defended. It can only be revealed. And here's the critical distinction. Speaking early would have forced you into a defensive posture, trying to protect something that is meant to arrive undeniable. When you explain a move before it manifests, you give opposition the opportunity to challenge it, critique it, undermine it before it even exists. You create the necessity for defense when the entire purpose of what's coming is that it needs no defense. God's delays are not denials. They are strategic positioning. He has kept you silent not because he doubts your ability to speak, but because what he's about to reveal through you will speak for itself with a volume that requires no amplification from you. There are manifestations so powerful that they silence every question, answer every doubt, vindicate every season of waiting without you having to offer a single word of explanation. This is what's being prepared for you. Your silence has ensured that the reveal will not be diluted by premature explanation. It will not be weakened by early defense. It will not be diminished by comparison to what others thought it would be. When it manifests, it will arrive with the force of divine finality, undeniable, irrefutable, and utterly beyond the reach of human critique. Until that moment, your quiet is not passive waiting. Your silence is the warning shot echoing through spiritual realms. It is the sound of something so massive being moved into position that even angels are holding their breath. The enemy hears your silence and knows something catastrophic to his agenda is approaching. Those who doubted you sense the shift and cannot name it. Those who dismissed you feel the atmospheric change and do not understand it. Your silence has become the loudest declaration you could make, and when your mouth finally opens again, it will not be to explain what happened. It will be to announce what has already manifested, complete, undeniable, and requiring no defense whatsoever. Chosen one, you have been walking through something that looked like isolation, but functioned as incubation. The silence heaven imposed on you was never punishment. It was preparation for a level of manifestation that would have been sabotaged by premature speech. Everything that tried to pull words from you, everyone who demanded explanations, every situation that tempted you to defend yourself, these were not tests you failed. They were traps you avoided. You are standing now in the aftermath of a divine gag order that has repositioned you beyond the reach of attacks that were already in motion, cleared your path of obstacles you never saw, and protected the integrity of a destiny too valuable to broadcast before its time. The silence is beginning to shift. You can feel it, but do not rush the final stage of this protocol. God will release your voice not when you're ready to speak, but when the world is ready to hear what can no longer be denied. Until then, remain in the authority of your quiet. You are not voiceless, you are loaded. And when heaven gives the clearance for your mouth to open again, the words that emerge will carry a weight that makes up for every moment of restraint. The gag order is almost complete. The final reveal is approaching, and your silence has been the most strategic warfare you've ever engaged in. Stay ready.